Hello, Warrior Nation. It's Nile Harris with the Nile Speaks blog. And today's video is about the difference between branding, marketing, and communications and how to get started with building your brand or to give it a little pop. Hi, I'm Nile Harris. Welcome to the Nile Speaks blog. And this week, before I get started talking about the difference between branding, marketing, and communications and how to get started with your brand, please take a moment to like this video, comment below, share, and follow hashtag Nile Speaks. And be sure that you are signed up for my free e-newsletter at IamNileHarris.com. The weekly e-newsletter not only includes tips and tricks from me, it also is a curated newsletter. So those things that you're most interested in are going to start to appear in the newsletter the more you click. You got to see it for yourself. Now, let's get started with the difference between branding, marketing, and communications. I get this question so much when I'm doing advising and when I'm doing coaching with businesses, especially the smaller businesses, startups, and as they're starting to get started. Even individuals don't think that they need a brand. So I'm going to start with you individuals first. You're getting started with your law practice or your professional services. You're going to start consulting now. A lot of people are doing that now. I don't know when you're watching this. If you're watching this sometimes in the future, this is 2021 and we are coming out of the longest pandemic ever. And a lot of people have decided they want to start their own businesses or they're looking for something different in their life, professionally speaking. So they're starting to own businesses and they have questions about how to get started with brand. The most important question is, what's the difference between brand, marketing, and communications? A lot of times this is used interchangeably. Some organizations, especially when they're smaller, will have one person who does marketing, branding, and communications. When you're in a larger organization, you will find that the branding team, the marketing team, and the communications team are not the same people. They might be under the same vice president, but they always work tightly together, no matter how that's organized. I simply explain branding, marketing, and communications like this. Branding is the story. Communications tells the story, and marketing sells the story. So brand is the story, communications tells the story, and marketing sells the story. Now, let's start with, what do I mean by the story? The brand is more than just the logos and the colors. It is the way people experience you. And the first thing you have to know is who your target audience is. But before that, why? What is your why? And why did you start this business? Did you start it because there was a gap in the market? There was an unmet need? Did you start it because something happened in your life and you wanted to provide a service that other people needed who might have experienced the same thing? One company that I work with, their friend was in a car accident and became partially paralyzed. So they started a company that developed the treatment that he needed, a better treatment, elevated the treatment that he needed. That's an amazing story. They started with that story before they had colors picked out, before they had a logo picked out. That's why they were doing it. And then everything else followed. Everything else about, well, we want hospitals or these therapy centers to be able to provide this treatment using fewer people to do it, using fewer physical therapists to do it. It's a smaller footprint, and so on and so forth. It was part of their pitch. Then they moved into, well, what are the colors? What's the logo? They started with the story. My story is, I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing in life to have a great career, and it wasn't working. And sometimes it's just redirection, right? Sometimes rejection is redirection. And my story started on this mundane day in October when I went to the doctor for no particular reason and found out I was in a hypertensive crisis. And the only thing, it was my job. I was eating right. I was getting exercise. I wasn't drinking and smoking or doing anything that would artificially increase my blood pressure. It was my lifestyle professionally. And it was time for a change. That's my story. And then other parts of my story feed into my brand. But I'm gonna get back to that when I talk about what are some of the things that you could be doing to establishing your brand. Communications. Oftentimes, communications people are not marketing people and they're not branding people. So the communications people are very good at getting the story out there. They're your PR folks. They're putting things in newspapers, magazines, helping you reach out to podcasts. They're more of the long form communicators, right? They're the people who are going to put together more of the press kits, media kits, things like that. They make sure that that story is consistent, and they make sure how it gets told is consistent, and they determine the channels and the strategies for each channel and how that story gets told. And there, you'll find that communications people are very open to understanding the story, right? They're going to be asking a lot of questions about what's the story, why this, why that, right? They're the people that dig deep. Then your marketing folks, like their job is to take this story and create value in the mind of the consumer. They sell the story. They create the value. So they'll come back to the brand person. They'll come back to maybe the product engineer. I used to do medical devices, and I would talk to the engineers who designed the devices that I sold and marketed. And I would ask them, well, why do you have this feature here? Why is this? Why did you design it like this? Because I'm going to take all of that information and find my target audience and understand what my target audience wants. And I'm going to design the marketing to speak into their listening. I'm going to say that again. I designed the marketing to speak into the listening of my target audience. But I do that by collecting the information from the people who designed the device. So taking features and turning them into benefits. That's what the marketer does. And the marketer also determines, well, what channels are going to best be used for reaching my target customer. So they might be using digital marketing, for example. In medical device, it's a lot of face-to-face. It's not a lot of posting it on Twitter, though that happens. It's getting face-to-face with the end customer, which is the surgeon. That could be through conferences. It could be through different ways. There are ads, there are things like that, but it could be inviting customers to your facility to see how the devices are made. It is all about how do I create the value in the mind of my consumer, and then appropriately target the consumer through various channels. So that's the difference between marketing, branding, and communications. So if you're kind of struggling with that, now you know. So the next part of the question I get is, what should I focus on first? Should I focus on branding, marketing, communications? If you're just getting started and this is a startup, the answer is yes. The first thing, though, that you need to know is your story. You need to spend time crafting your story, and you need to spend time really getting crystal clear on who your target audience is, who's your ideal customer, and create an avatar for them, because that's the person that you want to attract. Your story is going to resonate in the mind of those folks. So when you're getting started with branding, it's really important to do the internal work first. If it's just you, it's the internal work is in your mind and getting those things into getting those things down. And if it's a small startup, it's why did you start this company? What's in it, right? Build that story. And then you can either start to make that story manifest through things like colors and logos and things like that. But the branding is the experience. The branding is how the customer experiences you. When you think about Coca-Cola, when you think about Apple, when you think about like these really big brands that, create loyalty, I'm an Android person, and It's going to be difficult to convince me to go to Apple, and Apple people, you're not going to convince them to go to Android because there's brand loyalty. What is that experience? Starbucks, when you walk in there, what is that experience? That's part of the brand. The logos and the colors are secondary to what is the experience that you want customers to have. So there's your story and the experience that you want your customers to have. And then you can go into, well, what are the colors? What does that even look like? What does the logo even look like? And you're not likely to stick with your initial logo for very long, because as you go along in your business, you'll find that maybe the logo resonates, or maybe it doesn't. Or maybe the name of the business resonates, or maybe it doesn't. So when I think about my story and I look at my own brand, like my colors are my school colors, my college school colors, and my graduate school colors, because education is very important to me. So my school colors are orange, blue, and maize. And if you know where I went, because I used the word maize. That's right. Maize and blue for the University of Michigan, orange and blue for the University of Illinois. I combine those colors into pretty much everything that I do, represents where I come from. Now, Warrior Unleashed is a flame helmet. It is a flame helmet that's blue. Blue for school colors, but also blue is the hottest part of the flame. Then there's the sword. The sword represents the warrior's weapon, which is their superpower, their gift. And it's winged. Winged represents when you make the jump, you're going to fly and rise. And it's in gold, which represents wealth, prosperity, and wisdom. And that gold is technically maize. And then, we have other aspects of the brand. So a helmet for Warrior Unleashed, because it is building and protecting your mindset. So I thought about what are the elements of my story that I want to bring into my brand? What are the things that I am providing to my customer that creates value? What are the features? Then what are the benefits? And what are the services I'm offering? And then how does my story manifest through what people see? Another part of the experience I want customers to have is I want it to be super easy to do business with me. I want you to be able to go to my website, book a time with me. I get all the information I need. I jump onto a call with you, and then I'm ready to go, right? I want it to be super easy to do business with me. And I want it to be somebody that you repeat business with. So how can you get started with your brand? What should you do? First, you sit down and you write out your story. You can write it in long form or bullet form. Pull forward those elements, decide who your target customer is and what sort of experience you want them to have. And then live with that for a little bit, then decide on final colors or final logo. You can do something interim. I would suggest, you're like, Nile, well, what do I do in the interim? What I did in the interim was, like, for example, with my name, Nile Harris, I just made my name into a script and then turned that into a logo because I didn't know what I wanted things to look like yet. But I did want a logo because people do resonate with people, like with colors and logos and things like that. It just looks more finished. It looks more professional. It looks like you're invested and committed to your business. Even if it changes, people are less concerned with the fact that it changed than it didn't have it. Another thing about your brand that I really want people to do, if you're committed to your business, get an email address with your business name. So if it's not I am Nile Harris at gmail.com, it's Nile at IamNileHarris.com, right? And that's on my website. You get your URL. You can get your URL for $12. You can get an email address. You can get them free in some places. You can get them for as little as $6 a month. But invest in the little small details of what makes your brand your brand. And again, if you decide to change it later, that's fine. But people want to know that you are committed. Telegraph that you are committed. I think when people make mistakes about their brand, they're jumping to the end and then trying to work backwards. You need to start at the beginning with what is your story? Write it down. Who's your target audience? Write it down. What do they look like? What's their avatar? What are the elements of your story? What's the experience that you want your customers to have? Write it down. What are the elements of your story that you want to pull forward? Like, for example, for me, it's education. And then they're like being a warrior. What does that look like? Write it down. Create these elements that of the experience that you want, having the right email address, having a logo, being easy to work with, putting together a one-page website if that's what you want to do. If you want to use a website, you don't have to use a website depending on what you're doing. But if it's on LinkedIn, if it's on Facebook, if it's on TikTok, make sure it's consistent. I once had a man reach out to me from California to work with me on some executive coaching. And when I asked him, well, how did you hear about me? Because he wasn't in my network. He wasn't in my immediate network. And I'm like, well, how did you possibly hear about me all the way in Nashville? And he said he was going to be moving to Nashville in a couple of months. And he went to a directory that I had invested in to look up coaches. And he said some coaches came up, and he said he read my profile on this directory, went to my website, went to my LinkedIn, went to my Facebook, went to my Instagram, went to my Twitter, went to my YouTube. And he said in every single place, my messaging, my look and feel was consistent. Every place. And that's another thing, is wherever you are, wherever you choose to be, everything needs to be consistent. So you don't want people going to LinkedIn and seeing one thing that they're seeing different from TikTok, that they're seeing different from your website, that they're seeing different from Facebook. Everything should be consistent. So that's my advice on what you need to do to get started with your brand. So just to recap, the difference between branding, marketing, communications: brand is the story, communications tells the story, and marketing sells the story. Simple ways to get started with your brand: start with your story. Then go to who is your target audience? What experience do you want them to have? Pull forward elements from your story to create the actual visuals, colors, logos, things like that. Be consistent, and also invest in small details, whether it's Calendly for booking time with you. Make it easy. Having a dedicated URL for your email. Make it easy, make it consistent, make it relevant to your target audience. So that's it. That's all I have for you. That was a lot, right? I hope that you got something from that. If so, please like, share, comment below. Would love to hear from you. And please also take a moment to follow me, and let's continue this conversation on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at I am Nile Harris. Also, sign up for my free e-newsletter that comes out every week, this week with Nile Harris. Not only do I share the content that goes out, Nile Speaks blog, Hot Tip Tuesday, if you're following that, it is also an e-newsletter that uses AI to curate articles that you are specifically interested in. That means no two people receive the exact same email newsletter. That's because the more you click, the more it curates stories only you are interested in. I will see you back here, Warrior Nation.